All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Kitchen. I serve as Special Assistant to County Executive Pittman, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for the second webinar in Season 2 of our EngageArundel webinar series. Your role in stormwater management, the maintenance, obligations, and inspections of stormwater best management practices. EngageArundel is designed to foster collaboration and communication between the government and the community. The initiative combines online and in-person events and resources to empower residents with the knowledge and tools to create sustainable and thriving neighborhoods using county resources. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly go over some housekeeping items to ensure the session runs smoothly. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded. If you need to step away or would like to take a copy of the presentation or would like to review the content later, we'll be sending out a recording after the event. A copy of the actual slides will also be provided. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your Zoom window. After the presentation is done, we will do question and answers, and we will both read questions that you submit, and we'll also give you the ability to raise your Zoom hand and ask your question verbally. So thank you again for joining us, and I'd now like to introduce our presenter. So Brad Burnham is the Environmental Control Inspection Supervisor for the Watershed Protection and Restoration Program in our Office of Inspections and Permits. Brad, who is a lifelong Marylander, started his current stint with the county in August of 2022. He was previously a WPRP inspector for Anne Arundel County from March 2014 to April 2018. Brad graduated from Ramapo College of New Jersey in 2011 with a major in environmental science and a minor in public policy. Since graduation, he has accumulated over 14 years of experience in stormwater inspections and related fields. So Brad, I'm now going to kick it over to you.
Great. Thank you, James, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's a real privilege and a real honor to be able to come and speak to all of you tonight. It's really an honor. I thank you so much again. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so that you can all see the presentation. We have a really good presentation in store for all of you tonight. Why is that not working?
We can see it on our end.
You can see it on your end?
Yep.
I might have to turn my camera off, everybody, because it's only showing up on my other screen for some reason now. But tonight we're going to talk with you guys about the WPRP division in inspections and permits and the work we do with our triennial stormwater inspections. And we're going to also talk about what your role can be in B&P maintenance if you have B&Ps on your property or in your community properties. So James has already introduced me. You can see my contact information right here. I did also want to introduce you to the names of our 5 WPRP inspectors. They are Andrew Fertig, Mary Ford, Andrew Hine, Michael McNeil, and Joseph Wells. Each of them is assigned a specific area of the county to do their B&P inspections. And across all 5 of them, there's probably over 50 years worth of environmental related experience. A quick overview of this presentation. We're going to talk about what B&Ps are. We're going to talk about why it's important to maintain them. We're also going to talk about residential B&Ps, triennial inspections, and in particular residential inspections. We'll talk about what the possible results are and what the follow-ups can be afterwards. We'll talk about what your role can be if you have a B&P on your property. We'll talk about the benefits of having B&Ps and maintaining them. We'll talk about what the county is trying to do to improve residential B&Ps. And we'll also we'll end the discussion with, if you have a drainage issue, who do you call? So what is a stormwater B&P? A stormwater B&P is a best management practice designed to receive and manage runoff created from adding impervious surfaces to previously undeveloped land. This is also known as catching that runoff, slowing it down, spreading it out, and soaking it in whenever possible. For tonight's presentation, you can think of impervious surfaces for residential lots to be things like driveways, porches, decks, patios, and rooftops. If any of you live in a condo community where you're dealing with community-owned devices, you can also be talking about parking lots. These BMPs are required to be built under the grading permits for builders and developers. And the purpose is to reduce pollution to the bay by improving, preserving, and protecting the water quality of its watershed and tributaries. Why is maintaining them important? Routine maintenance is critical to optimal BMP performance. It's important to stakeholders because it may help stakeholders avoid costly repairs in the future and may also help them preserve aesthetic values of their properties. It's important to both stakeholders and us regulating authorities because maintenance, along with inspections, are legally required under federal, state, and local codes and regulations, and it can help minimize the need for corrective or enforcement actions post-inspection. Some tips for all of you, if you do have BMPs on your own property, or if you are part of an HOA that has some HOA-owned devices, or maybe both, it's a good idea to self-inspect them. You should inspect them after every rain event. This can help you identify any maintenance concerns, as well as assess how well the BMP is performing. If a BMP isn't designed to have a permanent pool of water, it should be fully dry about 3 or 4 days post-rain event, unless it's a really intense storm. If it's designed to have a permanent pool of water, basically that water level has to drop back down to that normal depth within about that same time frame. It can help you identify minor issues before they become major concerns. It can help you prevent health and safety hazards, and it can also help you plan for costly repairs and upgrades in the future. If any of you happen to be members of HOAs and you have some HOA-owned BMPs in your community, it's a good idea to keep 2 dedicated funds. One would be a routine fund for your annual maintenance costs, and the other one would be a non-routine fund where you're going to save money away for future structural or emergency repairs. So for tonight, we're not going to talk about all the different BMPs. We do inspect several types I'm not including on this slide, like ponds, constructed wetlands, sand filters, etc. We're really going to try to focus on just the BMPs that have really hit the scene since like the mid-2000s and onward. Some BMPs you can often see in HOA-owned spaces or even on private residences can include things like submerged gravel wetlands, which is a BMP that is designed to have a permanent pool of water. You may see a rain garden in your yard, or maybe a planter box up against the side of your house. Maybe you have what's called a landscaped infiltration garden. These are really useful types of BMPs on lots with really sandy soil. Maybe your community has a microbiome retention in its one of its open spaces. A lot of people know about microbiome retentions already. Or maybe you have a dry well on your property. If it's larger, some of the older, larger dry wells for older properties are sometimes called infiltration trenches. These are basically stone-filled pits that are beneath the surface of your yard or your open space. And usually they're going to be landmarked with a cap sticking up out of the ground. You can see this one's kind of still under construction. You can see a downspout being connected into it. And you can see that clean out being that's going to stick up out of the ground once it's backfilled. You'll see that 4 of these BMPs I have put in bold. That's because unlike submerged gravel wetlands or microbiomes, you may often find these other 4 on residential private lots. Submerged gravel wetlands and microbiome retentions usually are reserved for larger drainage areas, but from time to time you will find them on residential lots, just not that often. Some other types you may find can include bioswales and wet swales, grass swales or dry swales. Maybe you have some rain barrels or cisterns that your downspouts are connected into. There's also a chance you may have permeable pavements for your driveway or for your sidewalk in your community. If you have permeable asphalt or concrete, it'll kind of have a popcorn-like texture look to it. Or you could have permeable pavers, which will be those bricks with those spaces in between. How can you tell if there's a BMP on your own private lot? Even if you don't know what they are, some of these BMPs like the rain garden, the planter box, rain barrels, permeable asphalts, etc. Even if don't already know that these are BMPs, you can probably at least tell like they're on your property, right? They'll kind of stand out to you. The more subtle ones are going to be those underground dry wells or infiltration trenches. The best way to know if you have one is if you happen to have some kind of clean out sticking up out of the ground in your yard, and you know that it's not associated with a septic clean out or a sewer service clean out, It's not involved with your, if you're on well, it's not anything to do with your well, or if you're on public water, it's nothing to do with your water. Chances are it's a clean out or an observation well, as we call it, for that dry well. Another subtle way to tell is if any of your downspouts go into an underground pipe connection like this here. That's also usually a telltale sign. They don't always have this Y fitting on them like that. Sometimes it's just a straight connection straight down. You may find these also being used to help direct downspouts under the ground and into something like a rain garden that's further away from a home. But oftentimes, if you have this on your house, there's a strong chance that you may have a dry well. All right. So who is responsible for maintaining the BMPs, and what are inspection and maintenance agreements? Private inspection and maintenance agreements, or INMs, sometimes they may be called stormwater management agreements, or SWMAs. These are legally binding documents made by and between a permittee and the county as part of the grading permit application process. Once they get completed, they are recorded at Maryland Land Records, and they establish that a property owner is responsible for maintaining the BMPs on their property. They may not alter the BMPs without prior approval. The BMPs must be made accessible for inspection upon the county's request at all reasonable times. And they will bind and run with the land as a covenant once they have been recorded. In other words, it's going to be inherited by each subsequent owner in perpetuity. Usually these are going to be recorded by and between the original builder or developer in the county. And from there, as they sell the property or sell the subdivided properties, each subsequent owner or owners are going to inherit that from there on in. So the triennial maintenance inspections. What is a triennial maintenance inspection? These are maintenance inspections that are performed to ensure that required permanent BMPs are still in place, that they are well maintained, and that they are still performing as designed. Every BMP in Anne Arundel County has to be inspected at least once every 3 years, and we are required to do these inspections under our MS4 permit. The current permit reporting period will end on November 4th of next year. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's basically a fancy way of saying our storm drains are separate from our sewer service lines, which go to the wastewater treatment plants. The WPRP division is responsible for inspecting over 23,000 of these BMPs as of July 1st of 2025 within a 3-year cycle. That number will fluctuate as more BMPs come in and also as some obsolete BMPs get deleted. These inspections are conducted in accordance with the county code, section 164303, which basically establishes if you have a BMP, you are responsible for the maintenance. And 164401, and also that the county has to do these inspections. Section 164401, that establishes the language that is used in those inspection and maintenance agreements. And also the corresponding INM, which is going to be specific to whichever specific property we happen to be inspecting. We do these inspections on private properties, so that can be residential lots, can be community-owned spaces, can be institutional-owned properties, such as places of worship or museums, retail properties, commercial and industrial. We also do the inspections on BMPs on several of the public or quasi-public departments' properties. And it can be anything as large as a pond down to something as small as a rain garden or a rain barrel. When we do an inspection, there are 3 possible results. The first result would be a pass. This means that we found no issues during our inspection, or we may have seen something that is so minor that it did not warrant any kind of follow-up, and we'll just inform whoever owns that BMP that they need to monitor that particular observation. The next 2, pass needs maintenance. This means that the BMP, all it really needs is some general upkeep. It may be having some minor functional issues, but they can be resolved by performing that routine maintenance. And then there's fail. A fail would mean that there are major issues requiring structural repairs. It would basically mean that you would need to bring in a piece of construction equipment to fix it. This cannot be resolved with just general maintenance. And this can even include things like some people have removed things like their rain gardens or their planter boxes. There is no real difference in an enforcement standpoint between the past needs maintenance or a fail. In other words, there's no real difference in the sense of urgency. The only time something becomes more urgent is if it poses a health or safety hazard. And even some of those can at times be resolved just by doing general maintenance. So this is a rating system we use for the purpose of reporting our inspections to the state. But in regards to how we interact with you as our constituents, it doesn't really change anything. So some examples of what it looks like if a BMP passes but needs maintenance. You might notice that you have some standing water. Could be due to sediment accumulation on the surface of a BMP. Maybe the BMP has an underdrain that has somehow been blocked or clogged and needs to be snaked out. Maybe you have a rain garden or a microbio or a planter box and you've recently remulched, but you use the wrong kind of mulch. We do not want to see things like cedar chips or hardwood chips, wood chips in these microbios or these rain gardens. Maybe it's become overgrown with weeds or invasives rather than Maryland native species. Maybe there's no plants in the facility. Or again, maybe there's some kind of blockage or clog in the underdrain or a clean out or an observation well. Some further examples, if you have a dry well and you have one of those observation well caps or clean out caps, if it somehow got broken because it's been hit by a lawnmower or something like that, you need to repair or replace it right away. We want to make sure that no sediment or debris gets down inside of that pipe. We have to be able to locate those caps so that we can actually perform our inspection. Basically, to inspect a dry well, we're going to open that cap and take a look inside. If it's been a few days since it rained, we shouldn't see any water. If it just recently rained, you would expect to see water inside of this pipe underneath this cap. It's not uncommon to find people have buried them or done something with them where we can't readily find them. It really helps to try to make sure that these are landmarked out so we can locate them very easily and proceed with the inspection. We're also going to look for things like downspouts. We want to make sure they're not clogged. We want to make sure that they're not disconnected from the ground connector. We want to make sure they're not disconnected from the roof gutter either. If you have a required rain barrel, you are supposed to empty them every winter and put them in storage for the winter. If you don't, it's not uncommon to find that over time they will become broken or cracked. Sometimes people will forget to put them back or they don't realize that they're supposed to be sort of like a long-term feature, at least through the spring and into the fall. Uh, I, if you have those larger cisterns, though, those cisterns are usually more durable and you usually don't have to put them away into storage. If you have permeable pavements, over time they can become silted in. If that does happen, please be sure to use a proper sweeper or vacuum unit. Please do not use a pressure washer or a compressed air unit. Some examples of compliance regarding maintenance. Basically, we want to see 85% coverage of BMP's surface area at mature growth of the vegetation. We also, when it comes to mulch, we want to see non-dyed, double shredded, or triple shredded hardwood. We have had some feedback from some landscape contractors where they've basically been saying that they prefer the double shredded. It seems to be a more practical material rather than the triple shredded. There is also the option rather than mulch, you can, instead of mulch, use light colored stone that's 3/4 of an inch to 2 inches in size. If you would like to do that, that may be an upfront cost, but obviously you're not going to have to remulch every year at that point. And another option is you can try to plant it densely enough, like you see here with this rain garden, that you get to a point where maybe you don't even have to remulch every year if you would still prefer to use mulch instead of stone. So some examples of a fail. If a BMP is holding water longer than 72 hours, that generally means there's something really wrong with it. If there's an underdrain, maybe the underdrain has at this point become like crushed somehow beneath the surface. So you want to take a look at that. There have been cases where BMPs have been encroached on or removed when people have put on additions or decks, patios, pools. And we've also had instances where people have filled in or removed BMPs, like their rain gardens or their planter boxes because they wanted more yard space or something like that. All right. This is where I'm really getting into it. topic I really want to talk with all of you tonight about, the residential BMP inspections. So we do have to do inspections on private residential lots. Currently, we do not schedule these inspections unless a homeowner already knows that they have a BMP and knows when it's due for an inspection, and they reach out to us first. These inspections are conducted at random. Our inspectors will knock on your front door when they arrive to your property and announce their presence, and they'll request access to your BMPs. If you are home and you answer the door and it's an inconvenient time for you, you are more than welcome to ask them to return at a later date and time that you can schedule with them. But just so you're all well aware, our inspectors, they do not need to come inside of your home. They do not need to get onto your roof or anything like that. They only need access to the areas of your property that the BMPs are located at, and they only need to do it at ground level. When they have completed an inspection, our inspectors can either notify you by coming back to your door, or if you want, they can just leave you a notice of inspection door hanger to advise that it was completed. Something I forgot to mention was you don't need to join the inspector for the inspection if you don't want. You're more than welcome to. We have plenty of people that do like to talk with our inspectors as they proceed with an inspection. And basically, they're going to fill out this door hanger. They can circle pass if a BMP passes. They can circle needs maintenance if it fails or needs maintenance. And they'll fill in some other information, including what types of devices they were inspecting. If no one answered the door for the inspector, whether you weren't home or you didn't realize that they were there, or you were a little uncomfortable answering the door, they may leave one of these door hangers requesting that you contact them, or they can send you a notification through first class mail. If either of those situations happens, please contact the inspector as promptly as you can. It's better to respond to them than to not respond. They are required to do these inspections. We want to be as accommodating to everybody as we can, but we could really use all of your help making sure that our inspectors are contacted when they're not able to immediately proceed with an inspection. So what happens after an inspection and a BMP has either needs maintenance or it failed the inspection? So our inspector will issue what's called a correction notice. You can see an example of that on the left-hand side here. They'll issue that for that initial inspection and up to usually at least the next 2 follow-up inspections. And for each one, you'll get at least 30 days to respond. Again, a response is better than no response. So please, 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 if you do get one of these in the mail or they make contact with you and they emailed one to you, please, please, please contact them as soon as you can. Who receives these notices? Basically, whoever the property owner is. Remember, those inspections and maintenance agreements make the property owner that a BMP is located at ultimately responsible. We're also able to use our inspection system to pull up the SDAT information for a property, and that's what gives us the information to know, like, where do we mail this notice to? So a lot of times it just goes right to the property address, but there are occasions where people do have a different mailing address than the premise address, and we'll send it there as well. So for you guys as residential homeowners, if you have BMPs on your property, this means that you'll get those notifications if necessary. Please be aware, sometimes there are communities with HOAs where the HOA is responsible for a BMP on a residential lot based on their community's declarations or covenants. This is a little different from the condo associations, who are usually already responsible for all the outdoor space. The homeowners will still be the ones to receive the notices, but you can collaborate with your HOA to ask them for assistance in doing the maintenance. And you can inform our inspectors of that, and we'll take that into consideration if it's taking a little longer than expected to get the maintenance done. What happens after you receive a notice? As a homeowner, either yourself or a contractor can contact an inspector to set up a pre-work meeting. You or your contractor should address the items in the correction notice. Inspectors will come out to conduct meetings and follow-up inspections and issue subsequent correction notices as needed. Once all the items have been addressed, you can contact them for a final follow-up inspection, and they will come out to do that follow-up inspection, and they'll issue you an in-compliance notice, and voila, we'll see you again in 2 to 3 years. I say 2 to 3 years because we do this on a fiscal year cycle. So let's say a BMP just had a passing inspection back in June of this year, 2025. The next earliest it can be inspected again is going to be July 1st of 2027. Because it's fiscal year 2025 was when it last passed an inspection. The next time it can be inspected is the start of fiscal year 2028. So to sum up your role, if you happen to have a bee on your property, please keep them in place. Be sure to perform routine maintenance, regularly monitor and inspect them. Please do not alter, encroach on, or relocate or remove them without prior approval. Please be prepared to grant an inspector access to your BMPs for inspection. And again, if an inspector arrives at your property at an inconvenient time, we will do our best to accommodate requests to return at a later date and time. If an inspection reveals any issues, please address them as promptly as you can. And if you ever need any assistance, please feel free to contact us. Please feel free to reach out to that inspector for more information. Or you can also contact a stormwater professional, and I have some useful links for you guys later on in the presentation to do so. So if you want to know more about BMP maintenance, I have a link right here for BMP maintenance guidance. That'll take you to a web page for our Bureau of Watershed Protection where they have a list of different BMP types. If you go to those different BMP types, you'll be able to access some of these really nice little brochures that talk about the type of BMP it is and what goes into maintaining it. And they even include a recommended routine maintenance schedule. Also, if you have a BMP on your property, you are eligible for at least one or more credits. If you have a BMP that was required to be built on your property under a grading permit, you are eligible for the Watershed Protection Restoration Fee credit. If you have a self-installed BMP, you are eligible for not just that credit, but also the Stormwater Property Tax credit. The WPRF credit is something that is programmed by our Bureau of Watershed Protection, and the Stormwater Property Tax credit is something handled by our tax division. So what is the county doing moving forward? We have, over the past few years, issued several what we call blue notices. These notices have been issued both internally in our department and also externally to different stakeholders, homeowners, HOAs, developers, etc. And the goal is to try to work together to improve BMP design, improve access for maintenance, improve maintenance itself, and improve construction. And you may find some of these notices very useful. All of these are hyperlinks to these different blue notices, and you may want to check those out. Another thing we're doing moving forward to try to get more exposure to these residential inspections, we are starting to experiment with a postcard announcement. We did a test batch of these postcards this year. We got some really good feedback. A lot of it was very super positive, which was really, really great to see. And we have a different version that we've since made based on that feedback. We're going to do a larger test pilot of these postcards in the near future. The hope is to eventually be able to send these to all the residential BMP owners on either a monthly or a quarterly basis. All right. We've kind of wrapped up the what BMPs are, our maintenance inspections, what happens after an inspection, etc. So I do want to talk a little bit about drainage, runoff, and stormwater concerns. Who is assigned to what? If you have a runoff issue and the cause is something, some kind of activity that is unpermitted or unapproved, or it was approved under a standard grading plan, including standard grading plans for building permits, you'll want to reach out to our code compliance division. They're the ones that handle those complaints. If a runoff issue is being caused by activity covered under an active grading permit, that's going to go to our grading division. And that includes any issues involving BMPs that are being constructed or are still or were constructed under a permit, but that permit is still open and active. Our division, the WPRP, we're going to look into any issues with private-owned BMPs post-construction. Basically, the grading permit's been closed and the permanent BMPs that are still in place are experiencing some kind of issue. That's what we're going to look at. Sometimes this can also include private storm drains, but not all the time. And then we have our strike team division. They're going to address any concerns not covered above, with the exception of any issues involving storm drains in the public right-of-ways. They're also the group that takes a look into concerns with development and its impacts to downstream properties. If you have a runoff issue involving public storm drains inside the county right-of-way, you're going to want to call the Road Operations Division and Bureau of Highways over in DPW. I have a link to the Road Maintenance Districts map. If you select that link, it'll pop up a PDF map. You'll see the 3 different districts. They are Eastern, Western, and Southern. And you'll have a phone number for that direct district. You can also call the Bureau of Highways at their main line, extension 7321. If it's after hours, you can call them at extension 8400. You can try emailing them. I also included a link where you can report any issues online. Now, if you have any issues with stormwater BMPs that are receiving runoff from the county right-of-way, such as a stormwater management pond in a neighborhood with public roads, that's more than likely going to be our Stormwater Infrastructure Programs Division over in DPW. You'll want to give them a call at extension 4240, and you can ask to speak with them. They will also look into concerns forwarded to them from road operations when the public storm drains are either too far outside the county right-of-way or whatever the issue is with the public drainage system, it's beyond road operations capabilities. Situations where maybe like we have to look at regrading a road or retrofitting a public stormwater pond, things like that. So drainage, runoff, and stormwater issues between neighbors, a civil issue. It's not uncommon for us to receive concerns or complaints about neighbors and the directions in which they point their downspouts or their sump pumps. Maybe they've constructed a patio and that's somehow creating runoff for a downhill neighbor. Unfortunately, unless there is a violation taking place, we can't really take enforcement action in a lot of these situations. To help you guys out, an example of a code violation, if you're experiencing something like this, would be disconnecting a downspout from a required BMP. It is also a violation to drain a sump pump into a required BMP. So if you have a rain garden or a dry well that your downspouts are connected into, please do not connect your sump pump into that downspout or into the pipe that drains that downspout to those BMPs. When you do that, it can oversaturate those BMPs. Now, if you want to do a little French drain right next to where your sump pump comes out and you want to connect it into its own little French drain, that's fine. Another example of a violation would be discharging sump pumps or regular downspouts, basically downspouts that aren't required to go into a BMP within 5 feet of the nearest adjoining property line. We would recommend, whenever possible, keeping those discharge points at least 10 feet away, just in the interest of trying our best to, be good neighbors with each other, be good stewards for our community together. Another recommendation is you could self-install a BMP on your own. And again, if you remember those couple slides back, that may make you eligible for 1 or more credits. Now, having said all that, anytime you have a stormwater issue, you are more than welcome to call us. You guys are our taxpayers. You pay our salaries. You are our customers. You are our constituents. You are our community members. We want to provide you with excellent service. It is not your job to determine if something is a violation or not. That is our job. So anytime you do have a concern, please feel free to call us. You can either call us at 311. I've also included a couple other phone numbers in here that you can call. You can try emailing us. On the left-hand side here, I've included a couple links. The big picture with the 311, that'll take you to See, Click, Fix for Anne Arundel County. You can submit that using your laptop or your tablet. You can also download the 311 or the See, Click, Fix app either onto your Apple device through the App Store or onto your Android device through the Google Play Store. Another option, if you're experiencing drainage issues and you want to look to improve stormwater management on your own property and you kind of feel like you need some assistance, please feel free to call our Education and Outreach Coordinator, Sally Albright, with the Bureau of Watershed Protection. She's absolutely wonderful. She is very passionate about the work she does and about educating our constituents on stormwater. Very environmentally friendly, very environmentally directed mind. She is absolutely wonderful to work with. You can contact her and ask her to schedule a site visit with you. Another option is you can schedule a residential site assessment with a watershed steward from the Anne Arundel Watershed Stewards Academy. which is a nonprofit full of master watershed stewards here in Anne Arundel County. I've included a link to do that request. I do believe that we may have some watershed stewards on the call tonight. They are, they know their stuff, man. They are really great to work with. All right, so we're going to start wrapping this up. Our take-home points. Stormwater BMPs are facilities, devices, or practices designed to receive and manage runoff from newly added impervious surfaces from development. This is also known as slowing it down, spreading it out, and soaking it in. They are vital to improving, protecting, and preserving the water quality of the bay, its watershed, and its tributaries. And routine maintenance is key to ensuring optimal performance. Inspection and maintenance agreements make current property owners responsible for keeping, maintaining, repairing, and, if necessary, restoring or reinstalling BMPs on their property. Anne Arundel County is required to conduct triennial inspections on all BMPs in the county. And the WPRP division inspects all the private-owned BMPs, including residential-owned and community-owned. Triennial inspections that reveal issues can result in a correction notice. Please remember, a response is better than no response. We are taking steps to ensure BMP access, maintenance, and upkeep is more effective and practical, particularly for homeowners, residents, and HOAs. The county is looking to raise more awareness about triennial inspections, particularly for residential properties. If you have a runoff concern, your assistance in identifying the cause can help us address the issue as promptly as possible by getting you to the right division. Your role as a resident, if you happen to have a BMP on your property, is to keep it and maintain it and make it accessible for inspection upon request. Please do not be afraid to contact us for assistance with maintenance. And if you observe a drainage or runoff issue, please report it. See something, say something. And I'm going to wrap this up with providing you guys some additional resources. I've included our general contact information for our division right here at the top. I have a link right here to the web page for our group as well. If ever you want to request a copy of your communities or your home's as-built or inspection maintenance agreement, you can use these links here to submit a public information request. I've included some links to the Bureau of Watershed Protection's main page and a duplicate link to that BMP maintenance brochure page. James, how are we doing on time?
You get a few more minutes.
Perfect.
And then we'll have a solid 15, 20 minutes for questions.
Awesome. So I do want to demonstrate. James, can you tell me if everyone can see this map here?
Yes, we can.
So this is called the Watershed Viewer. I've included a link to it in this presentation. If you click that link and you come here, you'll just click I agree to the above terms and conditions, hit OK. You can use this viewer to actually see where BMPs are located throughout the county. This is a publicly available application. You can go up here to the right-hand corner. You'll see a little folder looking icon here. You select that. Go down to this layer right here, MS4 Stormwater BMPs. You can select that. And right here, you can select MS4 Stormwater BMPs. You'll see it's a little orange triangle. And once you zoom in close enough, you'll see those little triangles sprinkled throughout. You can also use this viewer to turn on, if you would like, some storm drain layers. We do have the county-owned storm drains in this application, as well as some of the Annapolis City storm pipes. There is another viewer that I've abbreviated in calling the utility viewer. You can use this viewer to view not only the county storm drains, but you can also use it, once you zoom in close enough, you can also use it. You'll see down here, there are layers labeled non-county. So if you live in a community with private storm drains, they may, not always, but they may be mapped in, and you may be able to view them on this viewer. You can see them. An example would be right here by the hospital. You can see the non-county storm drains are colored in gray here. And finally, some additional resources. If you're ever looking for assistance, there are two groups of stormwater professionals that you can try contacting. One of them is the Chesapeake Conservation Landscape Council. They issue what's called the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Certification. They keep a directory of their certified professionals. Another option, want to mention them again, is the Anne Arundel Watershed Stewards Academy. I have a link to their main page as well as a link to contact one of their stewards. Again, there's residential site assessments. I've included links to their lists of contractors and vendors that they've worked with or that they know are present here in the county. Um, I've also included a link to their stormwater success course. This is a really informative course, particularly for HOA and residential owned BMPs. It's the result of a lot of hard work from a few different people in the Watershed Stewards Academy, particularly Jeffrey Pop and Stephen Miller. Jeffrey Pop is one of their staff members, and Stephen Miller is a master steward with a lot of experience. Um, they actually presented at this year's Community Association Summit, and I've included a link to the video presentation of that right here. We're hoping this upcoming Community Association Summit to maybe include a portion where they host a field day where I will actually be the one leading a field, like basically a field inspection for people to observe how we do these inspections. The Watershed Stewards Academy, again, can't say enough good things about them. They're a really good partner for the county, and if ever you want to learn more about stormwater and what you can do on your own property, they're a great tool out there for you to utilize. So thank you all very much. I know that was a lot of information. Again, it's such a privilege to be speaking to you tonight, and I'm happy to take on any questions you guys may have.
All right. Thank you, Brad. If you don't mind stopping to sharing your screen and
Yep,
turning the camera back on just so people can interact with you a little bit better, even though
yeah,
it's virtually, as
sure.
we do this. So we've got about, 15 to 20 minutes to go through questions. We have 5 or 6 that have been entered in the Q&A function. I will start with those, but if any of our guests listening want to raise your virtual Zoom hand through that reactions tab at the bottom of your screen, then we can let you ask your question live as well. But first question is, what if you have a BMP that is a gutter down from a private home to a pipe, but the pipe goes through the common ground of an HOA?
Oof. I'm trying to picture that in my head. So the BMP that um, I know it says anonymous attendee. I'd like to know, is the BMP on the HOA owned property or is it still on that private property? Any, any chance, I
Yeah.
think that would help to kind of know.
Okay. We can see if we can get clarification on that. And if not, we can loop back to it at the end. Next question is, how do you fix a silted in BMP with general maintenance?
A silted in BMP, again, this would be only if it's like a little bit of sediment accumulation on the top. If it's, less than like an inch of sediment accumulation or so, like all we're talking about is all you really need to do is take like a hand shovel and dig that sediment out. It may mean that you need to come in and, um, remulch afterwards a little bit, but mainly I look at it as long as you're not doing something that involves like heavy equipment or something that's very energy intensive, we usually classify that under general maintenance or routine maintenance. And again, routine maintenance or fail either way, there's usually not a difference in the sense of urgency unless there's some kind of safety hazard involved.
All right, thank you. Next question is, if an inspection and maintenance agreement is in place, but a new homeowner forgets or doesn't get informed well about the BMP, is there anyone accountable to make sure they are scheduling inspections, maintaining the BMP if you don't contact them on your end?
My best advice I could give to you is if you receive a notification from us and you either forgot or you're unaware, you may want to try reaching out to your real estate agent, or, if you had title insurance, maybe reach out to your title company to figure out, was there something that they did not uh, make sure that you got your hand on during the settlement process. Um, Unfortunately, like I said in the presentation, we currently don't schedule these inspections unless you do happen to know that you have a BMP ahead of time and you actually inform us ahead of time that you're ready for an inspection. We are discussing ways currently in our department about how we can improve these residential inspections. We are discussing ways about, do we need to consider the possibility of finding a way to schedule them ahead of time and, reach out to you as homeowners and say, hey, we need to do an inspection this year. Please contact us. We're also more than happy if you contact us. If you're the property owner and you contact me and ask me, hey, like, I got this notification. I know that I have a BMP, or I think I knew that I had a BMP. I'm trying to find where that agreement is. I'm more than happy to give you a copy of that agreement. If you're already the property owner, I can actually look that up and give that directly to you.
All right. Next question is what if there is a runoff issue from a BMP on AACPS property?
If there's a runoff issue involving a BMP on AACPS, I will send one of our inspectors who's assigned to that area that school is in, or that property is in. I'll send them out to take a look at the BMP and perform an inspection.
All right.
And if there are any issues with the BMP, um, we will contact the school's maintenance division. We will ask them to resolve it.
Thank you. Around how many BMP correction notices are issued each year? How many fail notices? And has the county ever had to repair a failed private BMP because the owner just did not do it?
I'll answer the third of those questions first.
Okay.
Since my time in the county, or including my first stint with the county, I've never seen us repair a failed private BMP because an owner did not. So I'm not aware of us ever levying any kind of uh, cost after the fact, because if you do have a private one and you fail to repair it and we have to come in and do it, we will uh, bill the cost to you as the property owner. I have seen BMPs that were removed, and we did end up having to take some people to court in the past to compel them to reinstall their BMPs, or at least install like an alternate, like a revised stormwater plan of some kind that fit their needs better. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't know the actual numbers each year of correction notices or failures, like a hard number. I know about probably about 6 or 7% of our inspections are triennial. Those initial inspections, about 6 or 7% of them usually result in a result of past needs maintenance, and about 2 or 3% may result in a fail.
All right. Steve Miller says, nice job covering a lot of good information. So kudos to
Thank
you,
you, Steve.
Brad. Do you have a date for the 2026 Community Summit? I'll take that one. We do not yet. We're tentatively saying early to middle of May, but we really enjoyed the space we used last year at the community college. And with their reservation system, we're actually too far out to reserve that space. And so we're looking early to mid-May, and we're hoping to nail that date down in the beginning of 2026. And we will let everyone know as soon as we do. To circle back to our first question, the BMP, the gutter is on private property, but the pipe that it leads to is on HOA common ground.
I'm, I'm, I do apologize. I'm still not quite clear because a gutter in of itself is not a BMP. Um, you know, what I would say is if what we're looking at is like there's a BMP on private property, um, it would be whatever property the BMP itself is on, the owner of that property is responsible for the BMP. It's almost sounds like what we're saying here is that the BMP is on the house property, and then it has some kind of under drain or discharge pipe running through the common ground. Um, Unless there's an easement for that discharge pipe where it runs through the HOA common ground, where that easement is owned by that private landowner, chances are the HOA would be responsible for the section of the pipe that's on their property, and then anything that's on that private property would still be that private property owner. Um, to the anonymous attendee, James, if you can share my contact information after the presentation again, If
No,
you want to reach
absolutely.
out,
And
if you want to give me a phone call, like if this is actually a specific example that you have in mind, I'd be really interested to get some more information so I can be more helpful.
and just general reminder, we will send the your slide deck that had all the
Hmm.
contact information on it and a recording of this entire conversation around. That will probably go out tomorrow. It's possible it'll be Friday, just depending on what the workflow is like in our office, but we will definitely get it to everybody.
Okay.
Kathleen Jarbo, you have your hand up. You should have permission now to unmute and ask a question. All right,
Is
Kathleen.
that it? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but
Yeah.
you're breaking up.
Okay, I assume that question you're asking. Oh, well, I don't know what that is, but uh
You
um
you
that
sound better
property you're
now.
referring to is my home property in Pasadena.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe I have to be closer. Is in Pasadena. There's no homeowners association. That's no such thing. Okay,
Okay.
they do have a community association, but that's completely different. Okay, this is an old area in Pasadena called Rock Hill Beach. Okay, and
Okay.
in 1973, the county wanted to put a storm drain through the property, a ravine. It's actually a ravine, not a ditch, but a ravine that goes through the property and empties into Rock Creek. All right.
Okay.
My parents wouldn't give them the right of way. Okay. So, because they wanted to come in, tear down all the trees, they didn't have stormwater management back then. They
Right.
didn't know anything about that stuff. Okay. But anyway,
Right.
the person that lives in the property adjacent worked for the county. He gave
Hmm.
the county the right of way to put a storm drain in, okay, and
Okay.
let the water flow into the ravine. Nothing was done to the ravine to protect it against all this water, okay.
Ka-
So
Hmm.
we've lost specimen trees, we've washed out a
Hmm.
lot of land, okay. Now I know they've got things out there.
Kathleen,
I've seen them other places.
hey, I'm gonna interject a minute. If you have a specific question that we can get to quickly, you can ask that now.
Yeah, well,
But
how are they going to
but
fix it? I would like to have it fixed, and I'm not going to pay for it. The
un,
county did it. It was their mistake. Okay. I like to
understood.
have somebody come out and look at it.
Yes, ma'am. We will follow up with you, but it sounds like we need to do some more extensive follow up on that specific situation, and Brad and I will make sure that someone reaches out to you for sure.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Sue Brilhart, you have your hand up and you should now have permission to unmute and be able to talk.
Okay. Similar to the situation before, our community has about 151 BMPs, and we have a lot of clay in our community. And the pipes that come off individual homes or townhouses are people, some of them have hired private contractors to take the water off their property, and some of them discharge it into the BMPs. I do know that the sump pump, it's not allowed, but is that allowed because it's going from their private property into common property underground and directly or very close to the BMP to land in there? Or should they be targeting it off away from the BMP with like a pop-up?
So Sue, please, please forgive if I remember right. Is this in Tanyard Springs, if you mind my asking?
Tanger Cove.
Tanyard Cove, yes. So those BMPs, if I recall correctly, like the any of the runoff coming down from the downspouts and stuff like that, is definitely meant to go to the BMPs. I can basically guarantee that. The sump pumps, in this case, my main concern with sump pumps is there probably is nowhere else for that water to go. Um, you know, usually we just don't want uh we usually just don't want people like discharging them directly into the side of a BMP. We'd rather, like, if the water is going to leave a sump pump and traverse over the surface and into a BMP that way, like that's one thing. Having said that, we aren't really going around and writing up BMPs where we see people have connected their sump pumps into that, particularly when we're talking about some communities where things are really tight, like some of these BMPs are packed into really tight spaces.
Okay.
Your community is not the only one where I've seen some sump pump extensions be punched in to be the size of BMPs. As long as we're not really seeing any erosion issues from it, we're not going to necessarily write that up in a report. Now, if you as a community feel like they need to cut them back, we'll leave that up to you, and we're not afraid to help you pursue that if necessary. But you know, generally, for me, the sump pump thing is more about when someone has a dry well that services their own individual home, or a rain garden that services their own individual home, like on a flag lot, let's say. I know there's pockets of the county with flag lots. We want to make sure that their BMPs are not being oversaturated. Usually, community-owned BMPs can handle the extra runoff.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Because
Yeah.
we're having issues with people that don't run them all the way to the BMPs, causing huge landscaping problems on the common property. So it's actually
That's the
better for
case.
us if they do.
So it's actually better for you if you do. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, if that works better for you guys, that's great.
Okay. All right. I'll tell them still try and keep the sump pump to their own private property.
Thank you,
Thank
Sue.
you.
All right. Another question in the Q&A is, do HOAs, you had mentioned earlier that a private homeowner has to reach out if they want to schedule an inspection, otherwise you'll just show up. Is that the same for HOAs? Do they have to reach out to request an inspection as well, or does that just happen automatically every 3 years?
It just happens automatically every 3 years. Now, having said that, we have had some HOAs that are keeping up on their BMPs and do know like when their BMPs were last inspected. Um, so we have had some HOAs reach out to us and say, hey, like, can you let us know? We know we're due for inspection this year. Can you let us know when you're going to come out? Or, hey, we know we're going to have an inspection coming up. We'd like to schedule one so we can walk all our BMPs with the inspector. So we will, again, accommodate that. But if you don't reach out to us, we're just going to automatically do them. Obviously, with the HOA-owned ones, it's a little of an easier time doing them, unlike the homeowners where we need to knock on the front doors and ask that they give us access to the BMPs first. With HOAs, we're allowed to just go ahead and proceed with the inspection. If we've already done an inspection and then you reach out to us, we're more than happy to forward you the results of that inspection.
All right.
I think, as an example, I think for Steve's community, one of our inspectors inspected his BMPs a couple years ago, and after he had done the inspection, Steve reached out to us and asked if we could type up like an actual report that they could keep for their records, and we did that.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? I think we've gotten through all of the questions in the Q&A. If anyone else wants to raise their hand, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Oh, okay. So there's one more in the Q&A. Can you provide a link to locate past inspections for HOAs? Do those live somewhere, reports online?
No. If you want to see past inspections for your HOA, you can reach out to me and ask me which HOA, or let me know which HOA you're inquiring for, or you can submit a public information request. That watershed viewer, James, is it okay if I share my screen again real quick?
Real quick.
Yeah, so that watershed viewer that I showed you guys all before, what you'll see when you zoom in, once you turn that BMP layer on, you zoom into a BMP, you click on it. When you click on it, you'll see this little information window pop up. It'll tell you what permit number it was built under, what type of BMP it is. It'll tell you who's responsible for the maintenance, and you can find the link for the maintenance information. It does not include inspection information, unfortunately. So again, even that's not housed here. So again, if you want to know about your community's actual inspection result, you can reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to provide you that information.
All right. And then will you provide a report if an HOA or homeowner passes, or do they only get a letter from you if they fail or just maintenance needed?
We usually will only send you a report if it failed or needs maintenance. We are happy to write reports saying that everything passed. Our inspectors, and we actually have some vacancies in our division currently. Our inspectors have to each inspect at least 1,000 to 1,200 BMPs a year. So whenever possible, we try to focus on getting through those inspections. But we're happy to write a compliance report for an initial inspection if you request it. We're happy to do that. Again, with the residential side, we've been trying to use those door hangers in place of necessarily having to write up a whole report if something passed an inspection.
All right. Well, thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
Kathleen, I see your hand is up again. I'm not sure if it's still up from the first time or if you had a second question, but we are at time. And since Brad and I are already going to follow up with you, we will just make sure that we ask, if you have another question, that we will handle it at that point. But Brad, just want to thank you for spending the evening with us. I know you have a family, and it's great just for you to give some of your time in the evening to help educate our HOA leaders and just other community leaders in the county. To all of our attendees, thank you for showing up to this Engage Arundel webinar. We appreciate you spending part of your evening with us. Next month, we will be joined by leaders from our Office of Transportation, and they will talk about some of the changes and just services that are being offered in terms of transit and bike pedestrian infrastructure and plans for moving forward. So be sure to look for that date and advertisement for it. And we look forward to seeing you all again at a webinar soon. But everyone, have a great night. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.